If you've ever pulled up a QuickBooks report and thought, I don't even know what I'm looking at, you're not alone, and it's not your fault. There's one thing that quietly causes more confusion in winery QuickBooks files than almost anything else, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Hey, this is Jeanette with QB Winery Solutions, and here's what I find when I begin to work with a new winery. When you first set up QuickBooks, the software walked you through a few setup questions, and then it handed you a chart of accounts. Seemed helpful at the time, except that QuickBooks doesn't actually have a chart of accounts built for a winery. What it gave you was a generic small business template, the same one it gives a t-shirt shop or a landscape company or dog groomer. So from day one, the structure underneath your numbers wasn't quite built for what you actually do. And then life happens. Your CPA suggests adding an account here. Your bookkeeper needs one there to handle something unusual. Someone recommends an account to match the workflow that they use. And slowly, one account at a time, your file gets harder and harder to read. Think about your barrel room for a second. Imagine if some barrels had no labels. Others had labels, but the information was inconsistent. Different formats, different details. You'd still technically know what you have, but you'd just spend way more time hunting for it than you should. And that's exactly what's happening in your QuickBooks file. So why does this actually matter? Because when your chart of accounts isn't structured for a winery, a few things start breaking down in ways that are really hard to diagnose. Your bookkeeper is guessing which account to use and guessing differently every time. The reports look right, but they don't actually make sense. The data is there, you just can't read it, even though you feel like you should be able to. And here's the frustrating part. This isn't anyone's fault. Nobody sat down and decided to make your financials confusing. It just happened gradually, which means you probably have been working harder than you need to, trying to understand reports that aren't actually giving you what you need. Now here's the good news. The easiest way to see the difference a well-structured chart of accounts makes is to look at what you're probably already looking at, your profit and loss report. So let me pull up that report. Here's what a typical P&L looks like when the chart of accounts underneath it has not been structured for a winery. You can see income accounts for wine sales for more than one channel. The cost of goods sold accounts include the winemaking costs, but very little is actually showing for the cost of goods sold. And in the expenses section, the accounts aren't grouped in any meaningful way. So this section is technically correct, but it doesn't tell you much. You have to scroll to the bottom of page 3 to see the bottom line. Now look at this one. This has the exact same numbers, but we've done 3 things. First, there's only one wine sales account. Yes, knowing the sales by channel is important, and I'll show that report in a minute. Second, the cost of goods sold now correctly shows the cost of the wine that was actually sold. The winemaking costs are in a different section. And third, the overhead expenses are grouped into functional groups. With this format, the profit and loss report fits on one page, and I guarantee you that even the most financially allergic winery owner can scan a one-page P&L and figure out what is going on. Now, down at the bottom are the winemaking costs. These are a separate number from COGS because they are a component of the cost of the wine, but they do not reflect the cost of the wine that was actually sold. If you want to see the detail, you can expand the report to see all of the sub-accounts. And the sub-accounts for the winemaking. To see the sales by channel, we run the profit and loss report by class. This report breaks out the sales and the cost of goods sold by channel. You can see all the different types of sales. Now, I find folks focusing on the top line revenue when they should be focusing on the gross profit. It's not what you earn that matters, it's what you keep. Now, you can see at a glance which sales activity is performing and where the money is going. Same QuickBooks file, but very different structure underneath. And it's the chart of accounts that creates that structure. A winery sells through many different channels at very different markups. To manage that effectively, you need to see the gross profit by channel, not just total revenue. In QuickBooks, the way to do that is with classes. One income account, one COGS account, and the channel breakdown handled by the class report you just saw. A winery also has a lot of overhead accounts. You want to corral them into functional groups so you can easily scan a one-page profit and loss report. And you want to separate the winemaking expenses from COGS and overhead expenses because they are neither of those. When they are down in the other expense area, you can now use the net ordinary income line to monitor the real profit and loss from operations. If you're watching this and thinking, okay, my file is definitely one of the messy ones, I want you to know that is completely normal. I've looked at hundreds of winery QuickBook files. A clean, winery-specific chart of accounts is the exception, not the rule. Most of the time, owners don't even know this is something to think about. QuickBooks just handed them a structure and they ran with it, and that makes total sense. The good news is that this is one of the most fixable things in a QuickBooks file. You don't need to blow it up and start over. You just need a clear picture of what the right structure looks like and a plan for getting there. Getting the chart of accounts right is actually the very first thing we tackle in my course, The Fundamental 5. Because when the structure is right, everything else in your QuickBooks file works better. Reports make sense, coding is consistent, and you can actually use your numbers to make decisions. If you want to see exactly how to set up a winery-specific chart of accounts, the other 4 foundational pieces your QuickBooks files needs, the link to the Fundamental 5 is in the description below. We also have a free webinar coming up soon. Look for that link in the description below as well. Your numbers are ready to make sense. Now you know why your reports don't make sense and exactly what to do about it. Cheers!